All eyes on me. That's right. Almost 30 years ago, in fact, in 1 month and 1 day, it will be 30 years ago that Tupac was shot right here in Las Vegas, September 7th, 1996, over on Koval, that direction from me right now. It wasn't long after the Mike Tyson, Bruce Sheldon fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, which is right over there. He died on September 13th, 6 days later, 1996, and the murder has gone unsolved for almost 3 decades. But will we learn the truth? The Tupac murder trial starts on August 10th, next week, 2026. So you might be asking yourself, why is it taking this long to get to trial? I mean, 30 years? The memoir, that's got probably the most evidence against Duane Davis. It's his own words. Because before, they did have that 2008 interview. I think there might even been a 2009 police interview. But it wasn't until 2019 when he released his memoir. Beginning in 2019, it's not like police just picked up the book as soon as it came off the shelves and started reading it. Some sort of rumor mill had to eventually get to some investigator's desk to say, have you looked at this memoir? The murderer of Tupac is this Duane Davis guy. And then once that gets to police officers, then they have to read the whole thing. Then they have to recreate how it happened to see if his accounts match up with what they do know about the murder scene. And so, as you can see, it takes a while to put this sort of stuff together. Then you got to be able to bring it to the DA's office from the police department. And the DA has to decide whether or not there's enough to take the case to trial. And a lot of times what the DA will do is it comes and the DA says, not quite enough yet. Then it goes back to police detectives. Maybe they have to scour more in the book, get another expert involved to corroborate the stories of the book. Then it goes back to the DA's office. And so 4 years after the book was published until the time that he was indicted probably isn't a very long time, considering that they had to reconstruct the past, 27 years before his indictment. Just 3 days ago, the prosecutors, the district attorney's office, they released their list of witnesses. And I want to bring up a few notable names, people you'll recognize. And if you don't recognize, I'll explain who they are in a little bit. One of the witnesses listed is Marion Suge Knight. Suge Knight. I'll tell you a little bit about Suge Knight. He's got Las Vegas connections. In fact, he played football at UNLV, where I went to school. He was a defensive end, and he had a brief stint in the NFL. He actually played 2 games. He was a replacement player during the 1987 NFL players strike, and he played for the Los Angeles Rams. When the players came back, he was cut. After his brief little football career, he co-founded Death Row Records with a few others, Dr. Dre being one of them. Death Row Records was instrumental in the careers of Tupac, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg, that gangsta rap era in the 1990s. So Tupac goes to jail, and then he's appealing his conviction. And while he's appealing his conviction, Suge Knight bails Tupac out of jail. He puts up his bail, and it was a quite substantial bail. That kind of got him in with Tupac, and not long after, Tupac signed to Death Row Records. Tupac signed to Death Row Records in 1995. Again, he was dead in 1996. A musical genius in his prime. Shortly before Tupac's death, Dr. Dre left Death Row Records, and a couple years later, Snoop Dogg also left Death Row Records. Death Row Records was in a spiral. It's rumored that Suge Knight started using even more violence and more intimidation to try to keep his artists or sign new artists, potentially scaring away many would-be artists that they could sign. And he did spend some stints behind bars in the late 90s and early 2000s for assault and battery charges. Suge Knight is currently serving a 28-year sentence. He pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter when he rammed his truck into somebody he was having an argument with, and he'll be eligible for parole when he's 69 years old. Currently, Suge Knight is 61 years old. Suge Knight is described as one of only 2 living witnesses to the Tupac murder. Suge Knight being one witness, and Duane Davis, who's going on trial for the murder, is the other witness. The actual gunman, Orlando Anderson, he's the nephew of Duane Davis, is dead already, actually. And so Duane Davis is being charged because he was involved with the murder. So kind of as an accessory, but I mean, you can get a murder charge if you're part of it, actually. So it's a little more than accessory, but it's his nephew that pulled the trigger allegedly, and Duane Davis was behind it all. Another witness on the prosecutor's list, former Mayor Oscar Goodman. Who is Oscar Goodman? He's a former criminal defense attorney, very famous for representing some very famous gangsters, one being Tony the Ant Spilatro, another one being Frank Lefty Rosenthal. If you've ever seen the movie Casino, those two characters are depicted under different names. Ace Rothenstein is played by Robert De Niro, and that's supposed to be Lefty Rosenthal. Joe Pesci plays a character called Nicky Santoro. That's supposed to be Tony the Ant Spilatro. But interestingly, Oscar Goodman plays himself in that movie. So if you see the attorney representing Lefty Rosenthal in that movie standing next to him, that's Oscar Goodman. Self-described real mobster lawyer. Became the mayor of Las Vegas in 1999, and he served until he was term limited in 2011. People didn't want to see him go. I remember talking to Oscar Goodman one time after his election, where he was elected he got 86% of the vote. And he came to me one time and I said, congratulations, 86% of the vote. That's crazy. And he said, John, we need to find those other 14%. Funny guy, very entertaining. And this is even more entertaining. As soon as he was term limited, guess who the next mayor is? His wife, Carolyn Goodman, same household. And she served for 12 years until she was term limited. So that house between Oscar and Carolyn served for 24 years as the mayors of Las Vegas. And I've known them throughout this time period because my house is separated from their house by only 4 other houses. We live in the same neighborhood, cross paths all the time. Wonderful people. How they're involved in the case escapes me at this point, but stay tuned. As soon as we get some word on on Oscar Goodman's testimony, we'll share it with you. The prosecution has also named some Shakure family members as witnesses. Tupac's sister, Shakure Trial, is a witness. Tupac's cousin, Katari Cox, is a witness. And his stepbrother, Maurice Shakure, is also a witness. He might have more nicknames than an entire NFL football team. He's also known as Preem, Mopreen, Mosades, Mogi, Little Mutulu, Komani when performing with the Outlaws, and Wicked during his time with Thug Life.
All eyes on me.
If I missed any of his nicknames, drop them in the comments. Mopreen dropped a memoir this year. It's already out on the shelves, called This Thug's Life. In 2024, he appeared on Piers Morgan Uncensored. He said that all his family really wants is to get to the truth so they can get some closure. What the family members' testimony will be, who knows? But we'll keep you updated as we find out. Other than, your typical law enforcement type people who are going to be testifying and your experts, reconstructionists, of maybe the murder scene or something like that. There's also someone else in the law that's an interesting character to be called as a witness in this trial. And that is Governor Lombardo, Joe Lombardo. At the time of Tupac's murder, he was a sheriff for the Metropolitan Police Department. We call him Metro. He later was elected to be the sheriff of Metro, and then he was elected to be the governor of the state of Nevada. And probably most important to me is he is a paratrooper from the 82nd Airborne, like me. And that's how we connected. He saw a paratrooper lapel pin on my suit, crossed the room, came over to meet me, and since then, I can't say enough wonderful things about him. We just had dinner maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Wonderful person. Have no idea what he's going to testify about. So Duane Davis has picked up 2 cases here in Las Vegas in recent years. One of them is obviously this murder case, the Tupac murder trial. But he also picked up another case while he was in jail for the Tupac murder trial. Assault and battery. It was actually 2 counts technically. One of them was battery by prisoner, which is codified as a felony, and challenges to fight, codified as a gross misdemeanor. On count one, he was sentenced to serve a minimum of 16 months of confinement with a maximum of 40 months of confinement. And as to count two, he was sentenced to 364 days. See, with the gross misdemeanor, that's the max sentence you can get is 364 days. If you're going to be sentenced for a year or more, that's felony. He was also given 224 days credit for time already served. Now on to the murder trial. I'm going to look at some notes here with my Oakley brand glasses. Thanks, Oakley. On the murder case, the Register of Action, the court docket, briefly describes the case as, quote, murder with use of deadly weapon with the intent to promote, further, or assist a criminal gang, similar to a RICO charge. We go over RICO charges in one of our Reckless Ben videos. He was indicted by a grand jury on September 29th, 2023, approximately 27 years, actually a little more than 27 years after the shooting occurred. According to the court records, his bail was set at $750,000 with house arrest and high-level monitoring on January 9th, 2024. A few months later, on June 26, 2024, this is a real name, folks, someone named Cash Jones posted the bond. But the court found that Davis could not meet his burden to show that that money was clean money. Now, of course, on a $750,000 bail, you don't have to post that full amount, but the bond amount was around $112,500. And what the judge wanted to know is this clean money, or did this money come from profits you might have made telling your stories about killing Tupac? So in the court minutes, there's another entry that I found interesting. And I'm assuming, it doesn't say it in the minutes, that it was an intercepted call. You know, the police can monitor your calls when you're in the jailhouse. The court noted that Davis had told his wife that Cash Jones was just a middleman for the true bonder, for the true person who was posting the bond. That caused court concerns. The court also noted that Cash Jones was posting the bail money in exchange for something, in exchange for the rights to Davis's life story, corroborated by a jail call. So this one does say it was a jail call between Jones and Davis. Now, Davis doesn't even have a story worth mentioning unless he is behind the murder of Tupac. I mean, you'd have probably never heard of his name. Who is Duane Davis?
Claim to be a player.
Well, when we say who is Duane Davis, the person who killed Tupac, now we're interested in who Duane Davis is. And he was trying to sell his life story on this. And this is what the judge was talking about. I don't want any money that could be brought to Duane Davis by virtue of him committing the crime against Tupac, or allegedly even committing the crime against Tupac. That's dirty money, and I'm not going to let that be used to get him out of jail. Later on in the court minutes, though, and from some news articles that just came out in the last couple days, it seems that day before yesterday, the judge gave an indication that Davis might be released during trial, and he might even be released very soon. Also in the court records, on February 17th this year, 2026, there was a motion to suppress evidence. And what they were trying to suppress, I'm going to get to, and this is the part you're really going to want to hear coming up, so don't go anywhere yet. They were trying to suppress a memoir that Duane Davis co-authored and made money off of, called Compton Street Legend, Notorious Keef D's Street Level Accounts of Tupac and Biggie Murders, Death Row Origins, Suge Knight, Puffy Combs, and Crooked Cops. That's the name of his memoir. That's a mouthful. So the defense was trying to suppress that memoir from coming in as to evidence because this guy knows so much about the murder, according to his book, that he had to have been there. The defense argues that it's just a book. He was just lying. Everyone embellishes when they do their memoirs. So that book, it's coming into evidence. Another thing that's coming into evidence is gang affiliation evidence. It appears it'll come through. It was not clear in the court minutes, but there might be a bifurcated trial segment to test this gang affiliation theory and see if it should come into the bigger trial. Bifurcated means you separate into two trials, and so there might be a little mini trial on his gang affiliation, and depending on how that plays out, that might become part of the greater trial. He also had a December 18th, 2008 interview, and the court ruled that that interview that he did in 2008, that's coming in too. The attorneys both agreed in court that the trial will likely last about 4 weeks and maybe a little more than 4 weeks. They also agreed in court to keep all of the state's witnesses' addresses out of the record. And as I mentioned before, trial starts on August 10th. Duane Davis has already gone through a few attorneys. The first two attorneys, he had a two-man team here. One of them is named Robert Draskovich, Bob Draskovich. His office is right over here. I've had interactions with him for probably close to 20 years. And then also teamed up with him was Michael Pandulo. I've known Michael Pandulo since law school. We were both professors' assistants to the tort class. And so we met then, we became really good friends, hung out a lot. We both sang a lot of karaoke together. Both of these guys are good dudes, but they're no longer his counsel for whatever reason. Duane Davis is now represented by Michael Sant. I've had interactions with him for probably 20 years too. I can't say that we're close friends, but I can say that he's a very personable, approachable, likable, and funny guy. And he keeps it pretty real. I mean, even by, quirky attorney standards. I mean, a lot of us might have long hair. A few of us have long beards. Michael Sant has the really long hair, but he's also got tattoos going down the backs of his hand. I mean, he keeps it real. This is one of those cases where seats are limited. The courtroom's only so big. The general public is allowed to go in and watch this trial, but there's not enough seats. And so they set up a lottery system. And if you win the lotto, that ticket gets you into the courtroom to watch the trial live. The courthouse where the trial will be conducted is just right up the street from our studio right here. And it will be conducted in Department 2, which is on the 12th floor, courtroom 12B of the Regional Justice Center of the 8th Judicial District Court of the state of Nevada. When it comes to updates on the Tupac murder trial, you ain't never had a friend like me.
You ain't never had a